So should you run on a treadmill or should you run outdoors? This could also be something to consider. Treadmills are certainly convenient, but they can be boring, and you might feel that the exercise effect isn't as good. But then, if you decide to run outside, the weather really becomes a major obstacle. You might think that running outdoors is the proper way, but then you start coming up with all sorts of excuses and wonder, what should I do? You probably clicked on this video because you were feeling frustrated about this. Isn't it just a matter of personal preference? You might think, why not just do whatever's more comfortable? If your goal is simply to burn some calories and sweat a little, there's really no need to go outside and deal with all sorts of environmental factors and distractions just to exercise. Using a treadmill is perfectly fine, but I think most of you watching my channel aren't like that. Many of you probably want to truly enjoy running itself and get better at it. From that perspective, outdoor running is basically the standard. Of course, that's only natural. After all, whether it's running a marathon, sprinting 100 meters, or playing sports like soccer or basketball that are based on running, you're not running on a treadmill in those cases. Outdoor running is the foundation. But here's the thing. How can anyone just stick to the basics all the time? Depending on the circumstances, there are times when you end up running on a treadmill too. So at this point, we need to carefully compare these two options. What are the differences between outdoor running and treadmill running? You need to understand those differences because even if you run on a treadmill, it's easy for various undesirable things to happen later on. For example, you might think, when I ran at this speed on the treadmill, it felt really easy, but when I run outside, my times just aren't as good. You might also feel like you get tired much more quickly. There are a few reasons why these kinds of things happen. Ultimately, you need to understand what fundamental differences exist between the two. That way, even when you're running on a treadmill, you can think, since this aspect is lacking on the treadmill, I should pay extra attention to it. I'll help you set up these kinds of plans so that you can enjoy running more safely and achieve better results. Even if you don't run on a treadmill, I'll be sharing information that will be helpful, so I recommend watching the video until the end. What are the characteristics of a treadmill? We need to look into this first. If I had to sum this up in one word, it's safety. We can consider this safety from several perspectives. The first is the shock absorption feature. These days, treadmills have really improved a lot. Unless you stomp down really hard from above, the impact is naturally absorbed by the treadmill. But what about running outdoors? If you're running on an official track, you can expect that kind of shock absorption. Urethane tracks are honestly just amazing. But if you just keep running laps on a urethane track, especially if you're trying to run a considerable distance, you end up running in the same direction the whole time. Because of things like that, I sometimes think that running on a track might actually have some downsides compared to running on a treadmill. I've covered that topic before, so you might want to check it out here. When it comes to running surfaces, aside from tracks like this, most people actually run on asphalt roads or uneven terrain. Asphalt, as you know, is a hard surface. Because of this, your feet or knees can often take a lot of damage. If the ground is uneven, it's easy to run into problems because your ankles can get shaken up. Depending on how stable the surface is, people who are heavier or those whose joints aren't in great condition but still want to run may find it a good idea to start exercising on a treadmill. Of course, for those people, it's not ideal to start running right away, so I recommend beginning slowly with walking first. However, this stability of the treadmill, the very stability we talked about, can actually have a downside that harms your body. You might be thinking, what kind of nonsense is that? But let me explain what I mean. It's the belt that keeps running at all times, no matter what. That's the problem. The first issue is pushing. Actually, this is something I've already talked about a lot in my other videos about running. When you turn on the treadmill and set it to your desired speed, as long as you don't fall off, you can keep up with whatever pace you want. When running, especially when you need to pick up speed and run properly, you can still manage to run even with poor form because you're not applying some of the key elements correctly. That's because the treadmill belt keeps moving. Even if your form is terrible, you can somehow keep going. Of course, if your form is bad, it'll be hard to keep it up for long. Especially among those the point I'm talking about now, pushing the ground back. There's a very high chance you won't be able to apply this properly. Let's compare these two running forms right now. The running speed itself is the same, but doesn't it feel a bit different? You need to have the power to push off the ground, especially if you're running outdoors. If you lack the power to push off the ground, it's really hard to pick up speed in the first place. There are probably many of you thinking, I don't really want to run that fast anyway. But actually, this point about pushing off the ground, there's another important reason why you need to pay close attention to this. Whenever I run, it feels like my calves are about to burst. The soles of my feet hurt. My ankles hurt. There are especially many beginners who complain of discomfort below the knee like this. When you look at the difference in posture between pushing off the ground properly and not being able to push off well while running, you can also see the difference in if you are using your toes properly. It's important to use your toes to push off the ground because you have muscles that move your toes from the soles of your feet and muscles that connect from your calves to your toes. You have many of these muscles. If you don't use these muscles properly, You end up only using the muscles on the outside of your calves that move your ankles, and as a result, you get tired very quickly, even if you haven't run much. And the fact that the treadmill belt moves brings us to the second important point. How do you land your foot that was lifted into the air? The problem is that you can still run fairly well even if you don't do this properly. In fact, not being able to land your foot correctly is something that happens quite often, especially when running on a treadmill. Should I land on my heel, or should I avoid putting my foot down and use a midfoot strike instead? You might be thinking this way. These days, landing on your heel like this isn't really talked about as if it's some kind of sin, but in the past, the midfoot strike was so popular that people thought you absolutely had to do it. But I'm not here to debate whether you should use a midfoot strike or not. The most common mistake people make is this. It's called overstriding, where your foot extends far out in front of your body. This posture is a big problem. Your foot should land underneath your body's center of mass. When your leg stretches out in front like this, you end up pushing the ground forward that much more. Then, a force called ground reaction force acts in the opposite direction, which slows down your forward momentum. But what if you're running on a treadmill? Regardless of ground reaction force or anything like that, the belt just keeps moving at the constant speed you set at the beginning. If your form is off, you shouldn't be able to pick up speed, and you should feel that, but on a treadmill, it's hard to sense that kind of feedback. But it's a bit different when you're running outdoors. You might wonder, I'm definitely trying to run faster, so why am I not picking up as much speed as I expect? It's easier to notice these sensations outdoors, but on a treadmill, you might not even realize when something is off. However, the fact that you're stably fixed in one spot on a treadmill, in some ways that's actually a good thing. In fact, your running form on a treadmill and outdoors can be a little different. But the treadmill is actually great for comfortably checking how you're running right now, for example by filming yourself and reviewing it. If you try to film yourself running outdoors, you have to set up the camera for a while, then run a long way back, make sure you're running in a spot where you'll be visible on camera, and then run all the way back to retrieve the camera. Because of that, there are often interruptions in the footage, and it becomes difficult to film yourself and check your running form. Of course, if you have someone you usually run with who can film you, that would be better. But with a treadmill, it's simple to do it alone. You can just fix your phone in a spot where the treadmill is clearly visible and film yourself that way so you can see your form moving consistently. So if you're using a treadmill, you could say that it's a good situation for checking your form. So how is your form when you're on the treadmill? It's good to check whether you're pushing off well with your legs, or if you're overreaching and landing too far forward, things like that. So what are some characteristics of treadmills? I've mostly talked about posture so far. For the last part, I'd like to talk about something a little different. I've mentioned that treadmills are stable and absorb shock well, so they can be helpful for beginners or for people who are heavier and find running outdoors burdensome. But this stability can also be a double-edged sword depending on how you look at it. The fact that it absorbs shock and allows you to exercise safely, from a long-term perspective, this can actually hinder your progress and cause problems when you go out to run in rough outdoor environments. Maybe calling it a problem is a bit of an exaggeration, but anyway, please hear me out. If you're the type who says, unless it's a treadmill, I'll never walk more than 3 steps and will always take a taxi, or if you really never plan to walk outdoors at all, well, maybe this doesn't apply to you, but I'm pretty sure none of the people watching this are like that. Most likely, those of you who enjoy running and even participate in marathons have been watching this video up to now. Running on uneven, unstable surfaces or hard concrete can indeed be risky. On the other hand, you could also see running on such unstable surfaces as a way to train your body to respond to those unstable situations. In fact, there are exercise methods that use this concept. For example, some training involves intentionally working out your lower body on unstable, wobbly surfaces to improve your balance. It's a type of exercise where in a very short time your center of gravity shifts forward and then backward, and your body tries to respond to those changes accordingly. This can be referred to as proprioceptive training or balance training. Let's take a closer look at what proprioception actually is. So what exactly is proprioception? Simply put, it's the sense of your body that you can feel even with your eyes closed. For example, imagine running on a slightly sloped path where the inside of your foot, the big toe side, is raised a bit higher. In that situation, you realize, oh, more of my weight is being placed on the big toe side of my foot right now. Whether consciously or unconsciously, you are sensing these kinds of feelings, picking up on them, and depending on the changing environment, thinking, in this situation, I need to use these muscles more effectively. This is what enables you to react quickly. So when you're actually running outdoors, the surface you're running on keeps changing. And in those rapidly changing situations, your body unconsciously senses how it should move and instantly reacts to use strength where it's needed at that moment. As this happens, your sense of controlling your body, your proprioception, naturally starts to function well, which can actually improve your stability. Basically, when you run outdoors, your proprioception and your ability to maintain balance tend to improve. However, it's also important to train these abilities separately. If you run on a treadmill, it's especially important to do even more of this kind of training. Even if you run outdoors, training these senses can help you improve your outdoor running performance or reduce injuries that occur from running. So, what should you do? Let me explain. The simplest way is to just stand on one leg and hold your balance, or you can make it a bit more challenging by adding some movement while you're in that position. It's also good to try balancing with your eyes closed, or to practice maintaining your balance on something that's very unstable. For example, you can use a balance pad that's specifically designed to be unstable, or do exercises on unstable surfaces while still maintaining your balance. As you keep practicing like this, your balance and proprioception will naturally improve, and you'll develop the abilities truly needed for running. So, as we've seen, there are some disadvantages to using a treadmill, but there are also good points if you use it well. I think it would be great if you compare these differences and apply them according to your own situation. To summarize some of the things I've mentioned, check your posture carefully. That's one of the things I talked about, and especially the areas that are lacking if you only use the treadmill. I also briefly introduced supplementary exercises like proprioceptive training and balance training, which can help improve your performance even if you run outdoors. Ways to run longer and faster without injury. I've shared a lot of this kind of information on my channel so far, and I plan to continue sharing it here in the future. If you found this video helpful and enjoyable, please subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in improving your running records, I've pinned a video in the comments that you might find helpful. I recommend checking it out. Thank you for watching the video until the end.